Hey, Andrew.
Hi, Dan.
Thanks for being with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Okay, so you know what? I'm gonna set a baseline, so we're gonna get to know each other. You know,
Yeah.
I want this to be, obviously we're gonna talk about your game, but I want this to be like, let's get to know Andrew Rourke, right?
Okay.
So okay, Andrew. First things first. It's all about me. Are you a fountain pen enthusiast?
Fountain pen? No.
Okay,
No.
strike one.
Right.
Do you smoke a pipe?
No.
Not doing very well, Andrew.
All the wrong answers.
What about fly fishing?
No, I've never been fly fishing.
Are you a mushroom aficionado?
I love mushrooms. I love eating mushrooms. Yeah.
And you're not a forager?
No, I'd like to go foraging. I've never had the opportunity to do it, but my wife's very keen on going mushroom foraging, actually. But I've never done it.
So, what part of the United Kingdom are you in?
So just outside Guildford, which is, I'm actually on the Surrey-Sussex border, in a little village called Rudgwick, which is just outside Guildford. So it's about 20 miles or so south of London, southeast of London.
Oh, okay.
No, it's southwest of London. Sorry, get my directions wrong. Don't even know where I live.
It's still very rural there, right?
It's very rural, yeah.
Oh man, so you're not in the country. You don't have a house with a thatched roof and.
No, unfortunately not. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? But no, nothing like that.
Does that exist?
There are a few places. There's not that many, but there are a few thatched cottages and old sort of 14th, 15th century houses about. Yeah.
Are they affordable?
No.
Really, eh?
They can be quite expensive. They're quite expensive to live in because they have a tendency to fall down a lot. So you have to spend doing them up. Yeah, a lot of maintenance.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm from Montreal.
Right.
Quebec.
Yeah.
That tells you something?
Yeah. So you're a French speaker?
Oui, oui. Est-ce que vous parlez français?
Yeah, fantastic. No.
No. Do you speak any other languages?
I don't. No, shamefully, I only speak English.
Because I thought Europeans, man, they spoke like 3-4 languages.
Europeans do. Mainland Europeans. English people don't. All English people just speak English. We're terrible. But most other Europeans speak 2 or 3 languages. Yeah.
And it's funny you say that. So, is United Kingdom? Would you consider yourself Europeans or are you English?
Well, that's been a big debate in England for quite a while with Brexit. I think it depends which half of the country you ask. It seems about 50% want to leave Europe and 50% want to stay in. So it's quite a contentious issue. We're out at the moment. The vote was to leave, so we've left.
Oh, that's never going to go away. That's never going to go away.
No, a couple of years, and they'll be saying, "Let's have another vote to go back in again." So
I know exactly what you're going for. I live in Quebec, so the French want to secede from the English, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's my whole life. That's my whole life.
Yeah.
So okay, enough about the fun stuff. Let's get into the nitty gritty now, Andrew. Why Napoleonics? Because I know you're an optometrist. You're a retired optometrist.
Yeah, that's right.
And being a retired optometrist, you guys get a better deal than we do on eye care?
Well, yeah, I guess you go back and see one of your old mates and say, sort us out with some glasses or something, yeah.
So why Napoleonics, man?
I don't know, it's been pretty much a kind of lifelong interest, really, since I was probably late teens. One of the first kind of novels I ever read, sounds quite bizarre, but one of the first novels I ever read was actually War and Peace. Really enjoyed War and Peace.
Bloody hell!
Yeah, I know. It's one of the first. I mean, I read lots of textbooks and everything, studying, and lots of history type books and things. But the actual first novel I actually ever read properly was War and Peace.
Well, I mean, I know obviously that's a classic. But before you get into the action of all whatever happens in War and Peace, it's long drawn out, man.
I had a few months on my hands to read it. Yeah, it did take a while. Yeah, so it was good. And I found that really really interesting. I mean, it covers quite a long period. Sort of, I suppose it covers about 7 or 8 years. The period that it's on the novel, right in the smack bang in the centre of the Napoleonic period, really. So that sort of super immersed me. love doing figure gaming, wargaming with lead figures. And
well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you also,
Mm.
was it your decision to have miniatures in that game?
So when I designed it, I always kind of in the back of my mind thought this game would be great to have miniatures. And in fact, when I was doing sort of play testing with prototypes, I quite often just used to use lead figures for the different nations. 6 different nations painted up for the armies. But I really thought, it's going to be down to the publisher whether they feel that it's a go or not, because obviously miniatures, there's cost involved in producing those. So I thought it'd always be some sort of meeple or some sort of marker.
Right.
But Phalanx straight away, straight out the door, they were, no, we're going to use miniatures on this game because it's just crying out for it. So they were very keen to, and I was very happy for them to do that. Yeah.
Now, how did you get that gig with Phalanx? Did you know Yarrow or Adrian?
No, I didn't know any of them. No, I spent about 2 years designing the game. And then once it was kind of ready, I play tested it sort of solid for over a year. And I thought it's kind of ready. Being in the UK, I went to UK Expo, which is like a sort of the local big show, a bit like Gen Con or something, but in England, it's obviously not as big as Gen Con. So I sort of researched beforehand who might be there, sort of war game publishers or strategy game publishers. And there was 2 or 3 there. There was Phalanx and PSC, Plastic Soldier Company. And,
right.
And Nuts as well. And I just thought I'd just go around them and just introduce myself and see if anybody's interested. I spoke to Michael Ozen actually on the Phalanx stand, who's actually, I think, since left. I think he left about a year or so ago. He's gone on to other things. Michael was great, really interested, and gave me a card and said, contact us and send some details through. I made like a little 2-minute video and sent it out. I sent one. The other companies were good as well. PSC, Will Townsend at PSC was a very nice chap as well, very supportive and interested. And also at Nuts, I spoke to a chap on the stand at Nuts, and again, they were really good. They gave me an email address to contact. So they were all very approachable and were interested in finding out about games.
Nuts. That's these are Frenchmen's, right? Nuts.
Nuts is a French company. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Phalanx is. Do they say they're Polish or are they English?
So most of the staff are Polish. Obviously, Yarrow's Polish and Vol's Polish. Yarrow lives in England though, and he's based in England. Their offices are in England, but they've got a lot of their staff in Poland. More of their staff are in Poland than England. So I guess it's in both countries, but they're quite a big stand at UK Expo.
Andrew, sorry for this. I didn't know you very well, and I'm glad I'm getting to know you here. What's your is this your first design?
Yeah, it's the first proper game
published design
that I would put out to a publisher. Obviously, having war game for 20, 30 years, you're constantly writing scenarios for games and adapting games, changing rules. But this is my first, all-encompassing design from start to finish that I've then approached the publisher with. Yeah.
So you think are you ready for the criticism?
I'm sure there's going to be loads. There's been quite a bit already. It's quite interesting. I think it's fair enough. Yarrow's Yarrow's been quite like a mentor really with some of the stuff we've talked about. Since I've signed with Phalanx, I've had quite a bit more to do it. I've done some game development with them as well on another game. Yarrow's kind of sort of said, whatever you do, no matter how good it is, some people will love it, some people will hate it, some people will slate it. You just got to take the rough with the smooth, and if people then that's their thing. Not everyone likes everything. So
no, and that's why I ask, because it's an issue, man. I've been reading some comments, and some comments are completely off the wall, but I don't know. I think I'd be a little bit more militant, maybe. I don't know. But you know what? You said development. Now, you develop your own game?
No, it's difficult to develop your own game. So, Coalitions has been developed by the Phalanx team. So, Waldemar, Marius in Poland have done the development on Coalitions. Because obviously, having designed the game and written the rules and it being kind of my baby, you then can't perhaps necessarily see the things that need to be polished, the things that need to be simplified, what needs taken out, what needs putting in. So you need someone with completely different eyes to do that.
Yeah, I know. And are you involved in the arts? And I ask this because I find most designers, it's artistic. How can it not be? And are you artistic?
No.
Like at all?
Well, I mean, I paint lead figures, so I do a lot of sort of model painting. So I'm painting on 3D figures, and I've done that for 30 odd years. So I can paint lead figures quite well. But if you gave me a piece of paper and said, paint me a picture,
okay,
it would look terrible. It wouldn't look like a person at all.
No, but I guess you're well, this being your first published game, I find designers are artists. There's a genius about it that I just can't wrap my head around. It doesn't work. Like I feel that it's a team effort to make a game, because how can you think about everything? And I guess that's where the developers come in.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, all of the artwork has been brought on by Phalanx. They've got a great artist, chap called Bartek, who does all the art. And I'm been blown away by it. It's really good. I think the actual board, the board design, I don't know if you've seen criticism about that. You may have done. The board's very different to a sort of a normal map. It's not a kind of accurate historical geographical map, and that's on purpose.
Right.
I mean, from day one when I started doing the game, I basically got a big bit of sort of A1 paper, and I just drew Europe off the top of my head how I picture it, and I purposely distorted it to make bits bigger than they were. I wanted the sea to be as small as possible, because you play war games and 2/3 of the board is sea, and it's a land war game. What's the point of having all that sea on there? So distort it all, get rid of the sea, and things like in Belgium, Holland, the Low Countries going through there, that's where most warfare in most periods in Europe's happened. So you end up all your figures, all your counters, everything's in a little tiny bit of the board and nothing's going on around the rest of it. So again, it's not always possible, but I tried as much as possible to distort areas to make it playable. So there's always enough room to get your fingers on things and stuff.
Now, whose idea was that?
Sorry?
Whose idea was that?
Yeah, that was mine from the start. That's to say the first board that I drew it out like that, and then just cut it up out of bits of coloured card, stuck them all on, and that was my first kind of playtest version. And that developed 3 or 4 times, sticking on more bits of coloured card and pen and stuff. And then my daughter's actually studying at university for graphic design. So she's good with things like Photoshop and Illustrator and stuff. So when I got my final kind of prototype, which was very rough, it was just bits of cut out cardboard, really. She took some photos of it, digitalized it, made a sort of a digital image that we then got printed, and that was the prototype that I presented to Phalanx. And Yarrow really liked the idea, and so he went with it. So the board we've got now is very, very similar, sort of contextually, in the way that the design works to the very first prototype I did, which is great.
Now, when you present that idea, like I want to distort the map, I want to make it completely asymmetrical. Did you get any flack? Did you get any pushback from anybody saying, hey, you can't do that?
I haven't yet, but it's not been published yet. So.
Okay, no, because I'm just talking about the publishers. So you know what I mean?
No, so I mean, when I showed it to Phalanx, I actually went to Yarrow's house, because Yarrow lives in England. He lives around in North London, sort of Aylesbury way. So I took it round to his house to show him. He invited me round. Got it out on the table, and because I'd spent quite a lot of time getting the board printed, I actually made a fold-up board, and it looked like a board. It came, I made a box and everything. It came out, and he actually said, this is a really good prototype. This is a well-developed prototype, and he kind of looked at it for what it was. There was no criticism at all of, oh, well, that's silly or that's rubbish. He just wanted to find out about the game. Whether he was thinking that, I don't know. But I mean, he stayed with the design. He's I've got some videos on YouTube, design videos, and one of those has got one of the prototypes as the opening image of the video, and you can see from that the direct sort of lineage to where we've kind of ended up. So he obviously was okay with it, but I'm sure there'll be people that are not.
So this, it's more axed. The mechanics are more axed on gaming than a simulation. Is that right? Yeah,
it's not meant to be a simulation in any way whatsoever. It's a kind of sandbox game. It's very, very, very grand scale. You know, your kind of governmental kind of scale. You're guiding the country. You know, there's no logistics, there's no supply lines. There's, you know, so if you want a detailed sort of strategy game of you know, like a hex encounter game or something, this is definitely not that. This is more of a, you know, like a diplomacy type board game where, you know, nations might only have 2, 3, 4 spaces for the whole nation, and on purpose the borders have been drawn completely freehand and have nothing to do whatsoever with geographical borders, and that was on purpose as well.
Does in your game, it being a diplomatic game, does war need to break out?
Okay, so France and Britain are always at war in the game. They're in opposite coalitions, and the coalitions are at war. Basically, the way the game works is you cannot attack anyone in the same coalition as you.
Right.
If you're in the British coalition, you can't attack anyone else in the British coalition, effectively, which makes total sense. So the fact that, and France and Britain cannot be in the same coalition. They've got their own coalition, effectively. And so by default, Britain and France are always at war. And then the other 4 nations need to choose whether they want to join either of those 2 nations or whether they want to go out alone. They don't have to be in a coalition with those 2. They can either remain neutral, try and keep out of it, or they can sort of declare what we call a war of expansion or a war of aggression, where effectively they're just taking everybody on. They're not on anyone's side. They're just fighting everyone, really.
Oh my God, I'm like that. I had a question and boom, it's gone.
I talked too much, sorry.
No, I thought cool. So is there backstabbing happening in this game?
Yeah, so again, I mean, I didn't want the game to have any bad feeling. Going back to diplomacy, you know, I really liked diplomacy. I played it when I was about 19, and I loved the kind of simple elegance of the kind of, you have one army, it moves one space, and they can support one thing. So that is definitely a massive influence on the game. I like that elegance. But what I didn't like about diplomacy is the fact that you can have kind of secret alliances, and you're encouraged to form an alliance with different people. So you think you're in an alliance with someone, you're actually in an alliance with somebody else, and you spend 2 or 3 turns doing things that you think you're doing with them. And it turns out then someone else attacks you and they attack you, and you think, oh my God, I've played for like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and it's all been completely pointless, and you get really annoyed, and people end up falling out with each other.
Yeah.
So it was exactly what I wanted to avoid. And with the mechanics that I've come up with, we can avoid it, because every part of the negotiation and the diplomacy action is all completely transparent. There's no secret deals. Everything you do, you are doing in front of everybody else, so they can see who's favoring who's helping who. And you're going to want to change who you're helping at different parts of the game, because there's one winner, and you want to try and manipulate the situation all the time. So you're the winner. And sometimes that might mean you need to help the French side or the British side, or you might just need to be on your own. And you have to decide all the time what's best for you, really. But you're making those decisions in the open. Everyone can see the decisions you're making. You can't pretend to be in the French coalition and actually be in the British coalition. If you're in the French coalition, you're in it for that turn, and you can't get out or do anything against the French then.
No, I mean, is there a reason why you didn't want any secrecy? Like, because it gives you fog of war.
Yeah, so the game is absolutely full of kind of decision making. It's all about, you know, all the mechanic is all about making decisions. The actual mechanics of the game are very simple. What you're actually doing mechanically, you know, you read the rule book, you could probably pick the game up in 10 minutes. It's quite straightforward. There's nothing hard about it. So all of the difficulty in the game, all the layers in the game, the depth is in how you interact with everybody else. So you're going to keep your cards close to your chest. You're going to play cagey, and nobody else is really going to know what you're doing. And that effectively is your fog of war.
Okay.
Because you could be saying, you know, you could, I mean, something quite often happens. Prussia is militarily is one of the weaker nations, maybe, looking at the scale on the map, the number of armies they have and the position they're in. They look vulnerable. And so quite often they can play on that. They look vulnerable. And so they've got to try and persuade people that there's no need to attack them because they're not going to attack them back.
Okay, so there is deception. There's deception then.
Plenty of deception,
okay.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And you can change sides. So, you know, if Prussia, say, in the British coalition for the turn and they're supporting the Austrians, the next turn they can flip and go into the French coalition. And even though they had been supporting in a position to support the Austrians, all of a sudden they're now attacking them and they might be in their rear or in one of their disputed territories. So from turn to turn, you can keep changing your status, your alliance, but you can't change during the turn. So you know you're safe during that turn, but you just need to be wary of what they might do. So you're always suspicious of everyone.
And where did you get the inspiration for that mechanic to make it that simple? Because I know to make a game simple is one of the most difficult things, man. To make anything simple and make it run is incredibly difficult. So this is a two-part question.
Yeah.
Are you like a hex encounter freak? Are you a grognard?
No. I think it's a shame to admit it. I think I've probably only played about 2 hex encounter games in my whole life. So I'm definitely not a hex encounter game. No.
And so where did you get that idea for that mechanic, that deceptive idea? What game?
Yeah, I didn't get it from a game, really. I actually got it from work. As I used to be an optometrist, and I was a partner in practice, and we had a few practices and a few partners and stuff. And some of the partners wanted to retire, and we needed to think about the future of the practice. And we decided that we was going to sell everything, sell the practice, sell the partnership. So we were selling out to like a bigger company that's going to come in. So the chap that came from the bigger company was looking to do a deal with us, obviously. We're sitting in this meeting, and he said 2 or 3 times throughout the meeting, you know, this deal needs to be a win-win. This deal needs to, you know, we both need to come out of this deal feeling that we've won something. You know, and that was his negotiation position. He was kind of saying, you know, I want to be fair. It's got to be good for everyone. And I was sitting in there and I was thinking, God, you know, I mean, I know it's not a new term and that's been around for a while, but I was thinking, yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting negotiation point. You know, you're negotiating where everyone's winning. You're not trying to negotiate a deal where you're trying to get one up on somebody else.
Right.
You're trying to negotiate a deal where they're happy and you're happy, and you both walk away thinking, yeah, I've done really well out of that. So I thought, well, if I can get that into a game, that'd be really cool, because then your decision is, it's not, you know, who should I deal with? It's when I'm dealing with this person, when do I decide that they're now getting more out of the deal than I'm getting? When do I need to, you know, stop the deal? And that's where the movement comes in. So when you want to move, you have to ask one of your enemies. It can't be one of your friends. They can't be in your coalition. So it has to be an enemy. You have to choose an enemy. So you've got to try and choose the enemy that you think can do you the least damage. So you choose the enemy that you think is the most favorable to negotiate with. And then what you're doing is, by them allowing you to move, they're gaining morale, and morale is like a strength that they can then use in combats.
Okay, so you're giving them something. Okay.
So if they let you move once, you know, if you can move once, and you have to be able to move once, then they gain 1 morale. If you then want to move again, so you increase your position on the board, your position gets better. They get 2 extra morale for that. So they've now gained 3 morale for letting you move twice. If you then want to move again, you move a 3rd time. So your position on the board is getting really great now because you're moving out doing what you want. But they get an extra 3 on top of it. So they've now gained 6 morale, which is massive because the morale scale goes from 1 to 15. So they've almost gone up halfway up the scale by letting you move.
And that's part of your victory points?
No, it's not part of the victory points. It's when you get into combats, you need to use morale to be able to play battle cards. The more morale you've got, so basically the more morale you've got, the better you can fight. So this is your enemy. You're moving to get into a good position,
but you're strengthening
you're giving them more strength. And so but you might get there after 3 moves, and then they're so strong you can't then attack them. So you've got to think, okay, I'm getting a, you know, and that's the beauty of there being 6 nations. So you're playing them off. You're saying, you know, to the Ottomans, saying, "Oh, Ottomans, will you let me move? Because I'm not going to attack you. I'm going to attack the Russians. You let me keep moving, and you can get stronger, so you don't need to worry. And I'm going to attack the Russians." And the Ottomans have got to decide, well, is he really going to attack the Russians? He's saying he's going to do that, but then if I let him go, because once he says you can go where you like. So I say, "Oh, I'm going to go to attack the Russians." The Ottomans let you go. You then go and attack the Ottomans. Oh God! So you've got to constantly decide, how much strength can I give somebody else, or how much board position am I allowed? Am I prepared to let them have? And weigh up, is what I'm giving away equal to what I'm gaining? And throughout the game, that continually changes depending on who's in your alliance, who's winning. If someone's really long way behind, that's the beauty of the game. It self-balances, because whoever's the weakest player, whoever's not doing very well, everybody then starts asking them to be their enabler to allow them to move, because well, they're really weak, they're not a threat, I'll ask them, and they just get really strong all of a sudden, so then they catch up again. So the game constantly self-levels, self-balances, and you constantly have to be aware of who you're giving the strength to and who's gaining, and trying to judge all the time whether it's beneficial for you or for them. And that's the essence of the game. So the actual moving and the combat's fairly simple, mechanically,
right?
But it's all about the negotiation. Yeah.
Now, you must have been inspired by a designer.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't know. I probably inspired more by games than designers. I know as I sort of looked into it more and more, I became very aware of Martin Wallace and some of Martin Wallace. I really like some of the things he does with card drafting and building hands. Like A Few Acres of Snow, which is a really good one, based in Canada. And Struggles of Empire, I play that quite a bit as well, especially recently. I've played that a few times with my friends.
I think Lincoln, no?
Lincoln, yeah, I've got Lincoln as well, actually. Yeah, Lincoln's another good one. Yeah, I think I've got Lincoln behind me here, actually. I think this is Lincoln.
Yeah. And it's funny, because when you were describing the game, it actually made me think about that game. Made
you think about Lincoln?
Yeah, well, it made me think about the board that you were talking about, the movement, but I know the game is absolutely not that. It's negotiation.
Yeah.
And you having negotiation, it being in front of your face, and you're saying, okay, I want to move. Can you, Ottomans, can you please let me move? So they say, yeah. And you're saying you can move anywhere. So then you can shaft someone that you can pull a Hitler to Stalin. You can do that.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you can make a pact with Stalin and then attack him 6 months later. Yeah, absolutely.
See, and that's an insight in your psychology. You don't look like a mean type of guy, but something is coming out there, right?
Yeah. Well, I belong to a gaming group, like a war games group, and so there's a lot of players in there. And that's the thing. I like games that are fun. I like to sit around the table, and I like everyone around the table to be involved. There to be lots of banter, lots of engagement, and everyone doing something. I don't particularly enjoy games where I don't know, perhaps you're building something like building an engine building game. You're doing your thing, and they're doing their thing. Yeah. Everybody's really talking. To me, it's all about taking the mickey out of people, egging people on. You go on, you do this, or you attack them. That to me is like a fun afternoon. If you're going to play 2, 3, 4 hour game, you want it to be really good fun. You don't want it to be a headache or anything.
Have you ever played Cosmic Encounter?
I haven't played it. I've heard a bit about it, but I've never played it.
Well, it sounds a little bit like that, but it's brutal in terms of like you make alliances with someone and then you just shaft them totally. And I personally, those games freak me out because you actually have to lie. So when the game is over,
yeah,
how can he ever believe you again?
Yeah,
because you lied so well. But anyways,
yeah.
Andrew, I'm gonna take a question from Bisnuya here.
Okay.
So, what feeling did you intend the design to evoke in the player's experience? Shafting?
Yeah. No. I really wanted the game to be every step of the game. I wanted the player to be faced with like a decision that was uncomfortable. That's what I wanted. That was the experience I wanted. So I wanted the player to be sitting there and thinking, I want to do this and I want to do that, or neither of these options are really good. They're kind of okay, but they're not really good. and it's like an uncomfortable choice. And then you've got to try and negotiate with the people around you from a position of discomfort, because I've tried to design it so you've never really got enough armies, you've never really got enough unit tokens, you've never really got enough money coming in. You always think that everybody else is better off than you or in a better position than you. And so it's your turn and you're kind of thinking, sorry, excuse me, you know, what am I going to do here? This is really tough. But I didn't want to overwhelm people with choices. I don't want to give them too many choices. That's why the choice really is you're choosing sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water. Sorry. The choice, the diplomatic choice, is in who you choose to enable you to move. So even though it's a movement mechanic, it really is the diplomacy part of the game. It is the negotiation part of the game. And quite often there's perhaps only 2 or maybe 3 players that you could choose anyway. And so you're sitting there and you're thinking, you know, do I choose, you know, A or B or C? I don't want to choose any of them. That's quite often the thing. You sit there and think, well, I don't want to choose any of you, but you've got to choose one of them. And that's what I wanted. So when I was playtesting, I was watching people all the time, watching their emotions. I like to see them a little bit awkward in the chair, and everybody else around the table kind of saying, choose me, or don't choose him, or choose it, I'll let you go. And so there's loads of banter, loads of stuff coming at people, and you've got to kind of sit there and make a choice. That was the emotions that I was after.
What's the playing time of that game?
Well, there's different scenarios. So on the Kickstarter, I think there's a playthrough video of the Kickstarter, which is based on the 1805 scenario. The sort of influence track, or the victory point track, is 0 to 40. But in the 1805 scenario, it starts at about 17, I think. All nations start there. So you're playing effectively just over half a game. And you can get that done in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay. There are a couple of shorter scenarios, but if you want to play the whole experience, sort of 1792, start of the Revolutionary Wars, all the way through to 1814, you know, you're probably looking at 3 hours, 3.5 hours.
So there's a campaign and scenarios you can do, right?
So yeah, so the scenarios basically are based around kind of like the start point and what you've got when you start. So the scenarios are kind of setting you up for your position at the beginning of the game, but it's a sandbox game. So there's no, it's not card driven. There's no direction. There's no kind of, you now have to invade here or you have to take this. It's just like, this is the situation at this time. This is what you've got. This is what your opponents have got. You know, go. And then you just handle it how you want to. You don't have to follow history at all.
What's the maximum number of players is what, 6?
Yeah, it's 1 to 6. But there is an expansion.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that can increase the players up to 7. But the core game is 1 to 6 players.
I want to get back to the expansion, but there's another question here.
Yeah.
How much historicity did you build into your design beyond the abstraction of political intrigue?
Sorry, I didn't say how much historicity.
Yeah, in the abstraction of political intrigue. Yeah.
Well, I've tried to size the forces available and the strength of the forces based around what those nations were capable of putting out into the field, and make the nations as kind of as relative to each other, you know, the sort of strength that they had. That's what I tried to reflect. There's kind of no attempt to kind of recreate any campaigns, you know, historically. You know, not saying 1809 and the Austrians have got to march down the Danube and into Bavaria. There's no you know, kind of following of a script or starting a thing like that. So it's sorry, I'm a bit dry.
That's all right.
It's you know, the nations are kind of as close as I could get them to balance them to be as strong or as weak as they were historically. And obviously their position on the board, you know, it is a map, you know, how they interact with all the other nations. Obviously it's historic, they've got the same borders. But then I really wanted to leave it to players to decide how they wanted to take their nations forward. It was a real design choice. not to try and dictate what. Well, I didn't want to have any dice in the game, and I didn't want the game to be card driven in any way at all.
So no dice, no cards.
That was my design mantra. There are kind of battle cards. So the battle cards, they're effectively just numbers that you're battling with. There's no kind of like event cards. There's no, you know, you turn over that card and this event happens, or you play that event. There's nothing like that at all. And that was an absolute deliberate choice. I want people to kind of view the game as they are the head of the nation, and how they interact with other nations is up to them. Because Napoleonic Wars was so interesting diplomatically and politically. Every nation other than Britain and France fought on both sides. You know, the Austrians fought for the French, the Prussians fought for the French, the Ottomans were on the French side, they were in French coalition. The Russians were on the French side. So it's not as though, you know, everyone was always a British ally. They did swap. I mean, in 1812, when France invaded Russia, the Prussians were invading in the north, the Austrians were invaded in the south. You know, in 1809, when the Austrians invaded Bavaria to try and advance on France, Napoleon asked the Russians to invade Austria from the rear. And they did take an army to the Austrian border. They chose not to cross the border, which is exactly the type of thing that I want in this game. You know, France can be in the Russian coalition, and France could say, well, let's cooperate and let's really take out Austria. But the Russian player may not want to take out Austria, so they can feign that they're going to help the French. But just because you're in the French coalition doesn't mean you actively have to fight for them or do anything for them. It just, whilst you're in someone's coalition, it just means you can't fight against them. So the Russians couldn't attack the French whilst they're in their coalition, but it doesn't mean they have to actually do any fighting for them. So that kind of part of history really fascinated me. The fact that the Prussians and the Austrians, you know, they really hated each other, and they virtually, you know, in 1805, the Austrians wanted the Prussians to help, they wouldn't. And then in 1806, when the Prussians then go to war, the Austrians have been totally defeated by the French and in no position to help, but I don't think they would have helped anyway. So it's not until you really get to 1813, when the Grand Coalition is formed, that you suddenly start getting everyone kind of realizing, look, we've all got to help each other, or else these French are going to constantly keep beating us. So you know, you've got all that sort of from 1792 to about 1813, 1812, 1813, before the penny drops, really. They're all fighting each other and got their own petty little kind of what's best for us, until in the end they form a grand coalition against the French.
Now, this is a little bit of a trick question. It always is. Being the game is heavily involved in diplomacy, would you call this a war game?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I keep getting asked this. I really don't. Yeah, it's not. You know, it's not a hex and counter game. I mean, most of my war gaming has been figure gaming, sort of lead figure gaming. That's what I've kind of always regarded as you know, war gaming. To me, it's a strategy game. I've always kind of viewed games like this. I mean, say something like Axis and Allies. I would say that's a kind of strategy game that's based in the war. You know, it's based in the Second World War, but it's a strategy. You know, a bit like diplomacy, a bit like Risk. These sort of games, they're strategy games. You've got to have a strategy. You've got to follow your strategy. They're not trying to recreate a battle or recreate a specific occurrence that you might want to do if you're doing a war game and you wanted to recreate Leipzig and you want to research all the army lists, produce all the troops, get everyone in the right position and fight the battle. So I wouldn't say it's a war game. I'd say it's a strategy game that is based in the Napoleonic Wars.
So I guess Twilight Struggle would fall under that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think this is a contentious thing that lots of, until I sort of put myself out there and sort of said, you know, I've got a game here that I want to get published. I never even actually thought about, you know, what's a war game, what's not a war game. It didn't.
I mean, it didn't even
occur to me, but it seems to be a really big thing now. People keep asking me, is this a war game or not? I don't know. What do you think it is?
Who cares? But anyways, it's a question, and it's I don't know, it's there all the time. You know, someone will put in a comment and say Twilight Imperium, not a war game, or Twilight Struggle. Sorry.
Yeah, Twilight Struggle.
Now you were talking about you're developing an expansion to that. Is that right?
What, for coalitions?
Yes.
Yeah, so there is an expansion that comes free with the Kickstarter called The Ancient Regime, which is effectively based in the 7 Years' War and the War of Austrian Succession, just before the start of the 7 Years' War. So that's a kind of free expansion that comes with the game. And then since then, there's a new expansion, which is effectively a standalone game, a different game.
Okay. That
is based in the 30 Years' War. So sort of 1600 to 1629, 1630, that sort of period. And that's introducing Poland as a played nation as well. And again, that's up to 7 players. Spain's playing it. In the Ancient Regime expansion, Spain is a played nation as well. So that's up to 7 players.
Did Yarrow twist your arm to have Poland in there?
Yarrow's very keen to have Poland in any game.
I know.
Even if it's based in America.
I know, but it's great. I love the guy. The guy's so impassioned, you know. Yeah, it's great.
I've had some very interesting talks with Yarrow about the Napoleonic Wars, and apparently the entire Napoleonic War is all about Poland, which is obvious now. Now I look at it from that point of view, it has become obvious.
I love the guy. He can't do no wrong for me. But anyways, now when you're doing your standalone expansion, which is related a little bit to your first game, how difficult is it not to disrupt the mechanics, but still making it different?
Yeah.
How do you do that, man? How do you, do you just carry over the mechanics and you make a new expansion and that's it? Nothing's different, nothing? Or do you tweak something?
Yeah. So things have to change. In the coalitions, instead of being, England and France in the 30 Years' War, now looking at it from the point of view as the Catholics and the Protestants, which these are kind of wars of religion and things we're talking about. So the whole kind of theme is obviously changed, but you can still effectively use the same system, the same mechanic of the negotiation and whose side are you going to be on? Do you want to change sides? So there's kind of main, there's people that are not going to change sides, and then there's the peripheral players or nations that have the ability to, if they feel it's in their interest. To be honest, the expansion has mainly been developed by Voldemar at Phalanx. He's probably had more input on the thematic side of it, but the core rules and mechanics really following on in the coalition system. Because the mechanics are so simple, the gameplay is really simple. It's got the potential to apply it to kind of multiple things. You could really use the same kind of idea around any period or any conflict where there's kind of 2 main protagonists, and then other nations come in and out of that. Other nations join them for a while or leave them, or may even swap sides. And there's surprisingly a lot of that through history. A lot of wars are not just kind of, often we think of kind of like the First World War, the Second World War, the modern wars, and everyone's kind of fixed in their side and it doesn't change throughout the whole. But saying that, I mean, the Second World War, as I say, Hitler made this lovely pact with Stalin at the start and let's all be friends. And then, when it doesn't suit him anymore, his tanks are rolling over Russia. So even in the Second World War, you've got nations promising something, forming alliances, and then breaking that alliance. Russia effectively changing sides by default. So the system can be applied to so many, and also, you could go fictitious, you could go futuristic, you could go science fiction. The mechanics have got the ability to be themed around lots of different things. So the secret is to make the theme really come through. So changing the thematic changes that really make it feel like the period. That's the core. And Voldemar was much more involved in that. His knowledge on the 30 Years' War is greater than mine. My knowledge on the 30 Years' War is much less than Voldemar's, I would say.
Now, Carl is asking, will only one expansion is going to come with the Kickstarter? Is that right, or 2 of them?
Yeah. So the Ancient Regime expansion. So that's the 7 Years' War and the War of the Austrian Succession. Basically, you can use the same board because one war virtually rolled into the other one. That comes free with the Kickstarter. And so that'll have its own separate board, and it'll have pieces enabling you to play Spain. But you will still need parts out of the core game, out of the coalition game, to use in both games. So that's kind of a true expansion. It's an add-on to coalitions.
Okay.
Whereas the 30 Years' War game, Raison, I can't pronounce it, Raison d'Etat?
Raison d'Etat.
Raison d'Etat.
Raison d'Etat, yeah.
Yeah, I told you I can't speak French.
Okay.
So that's a completely standalone game. That is another game. So if you back the Kickstarter, you'll be backing coalitions. You can get like the core pledge or the deluxe pledge with the miniatures. You can then pledge extra to get Raison d'Etat,
right.
or choose not to. It's up to you whether you want to buy that or not, really. But that's a second game. Again, completely different board, completely different pieces, completely standalone.
Are you planning on going out of Napoleonics and into what?
To be honest, not really. I've kind of read about, studied, learned sort of Napoleonic history for the last 30 years.
Okay.
I know loads about that. I know little bits about everything else. So, if I really wanted to do anything to add any substance to it, I think it's got to be in the Napoleonic period to have the knowledge to do it, really. It involved a lot of extra study and reading to do it, get into other periods.
We had in Montreal, a huge Napoleonic aficionado, Joe Weeder.
Okay.
That doesn't say anything?
I'm not familiar with him. No.
He's remember when we were young, we used to read these war games, cartoons, and there was the big guy kicking sand as an ad. A big guy kicking sand on a skinny guy with a girl. Does that make any sense? You ever see that ad?
I don't think I did. No, I don't know where I've been all my life. What's going on?
Because that's Joe Weeder, and he was a guy from Montreal.
Okay.
And he's the Weeder muscle building. He sells protein shakes. You know what? As soon as I said that name, you'll see it now. It's going to be synchronicity. But anyways,
yeah, he's
got Napoleon's hat, man.
Okay.
That's how much of a freak this guy is. I think he must have paid dearly for that. But anyways,
yeah, that would have been very expensive. Yeah.
Now, once your game is developed, once you've established yourself, once Andrew Rourke has established himself, does Andrew Rourke have a decision making in who you want to be the artist, who you want to be the developer, blah blah blah?
In future games?
Yeah.
I've not really thought that far ahead, to be honest.
Okay.
I've got a couple of games that I'm working on design at the moment. To be honest, I kind of feel do what you're good at and get other people to do the rest.
Right.
That really is, and it's been my view all the way through my professional life. And everything. You can't be good at everything.
No.
And other people can bring so much more to things than you could even imagine. So, if I I want to control the art, I want it to be this way, I want it to be that way, then you can miss out on a lot, because other people could come along and say, well, have you thought about doing all this? Have you seen this different way of doing things? And so I'm really open to working with people, seeing what they've got to offer, because everyone's got something to offer,
No, I think I think that's not a good thing, but I think that's an important thing to do. You can't box yourself in with your ideas. You're going to do it. You're going to develop. You're going to do the art. And as a matter of fact, I was talking to Carl Kretter. He's one of the educators in War Game Boot Camp. Okay. And I was talking to him, and I was talking about Stravinsky. Stravinsky would write his own piece, and he would conduct it. and I never heard such crappy conducting. Like it's unbelievable. You're a composer, compose. Let my God, what's that German conductor? Yeah, let him do it. Whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
no, I think it's important. And there's and I speak with Herman Lettman and Fred Manzo, and they do this with designing and developing, and it just works, man. Yeah. It just really works, you know, because when you're writing a rule book or something, you have the right words and everything here, but what comes out sometimes is not the right word. Nice. So, you know, you don't see it because in your head you see it. Anyways.
No, you're right. I mean, whilst I was designing it, I mean, I was very fortunate. I belonged to Guildford War Games Club, and there's 20, 30 members. 4 or 5 of them were really, really involved in the design of coalitions. I was playtesting every week. Probably about 14, 15 of them were coming in and out playtesting, but there was 4 or 5 of them that were real regulars and really helped me. But they also had their own things I was good at. One of them, Norman, fantastic rule writer. So I'd write the rules, send them to Norman. He'd have a look over it. You could say it's editing. You could say whatever you want, but he would come back with ideas and suggestions. Even just through looking through the rules, he might say, well, "Why don't you change this? Why don't we do it like this?" And you just can't get that on your own. You have to get other people involved.
Yeah.
To get feedback. Yeah, you can't do it by yourself.
What was I gonna say also? Your expansion, and it's funny, this question kind of makes sense and it doesn't make sense. So why make a standalone game that you don't need the original with the same mechanics? How long can you do that? I know Dan Versen with his leader games, he can go on and on and on. Now with your mechanics and all that with the game, how much more do you think you're going to do with that idea?
Okay, so, well, I mean, initially, I would have been chuffed as punch and as happy as anything just to have the original Napoleonic game. That was all really I envisaged. Phalanx have been super keen and super supportive. I think they can see something in the game that they really like, and certainly they're very keen to kind of get the most of it. As in, some people might like Napoleonic games, other people might like 30-year war games, not necessarily the same people. So I think they see that there's the potential that the game can work across themes, and why not? Because they see that it's, in their view, obviously, that it's a game that hopefully people are going to like and enjoy playing. The proof in the pudding is going to come, Kickstarter fulfills and people actually play it, and people start saying, "Yeah, this is great," or "Wow, it's really rubbish," and So, how many other games will come out in the system? I think that's really going to come down to how well it's received once it's been played by multiple people multiple times, to see if there's an appetite for it, really. I mean, certainly at the moment, I've got some ideas for other themes that can be used for, but I'm not actually going to do anything about those ideas until we see what happens with what we've got, really. I just want people to enjoy the game.
But there's gonna be more than half the people will enjoy the game because it's a game, man. It's it's a game, and then you're gonna get what? Am I gonna say a third? Bloody hell! They're just gonna fry you. But hey, it's a cruel world, man. And it's funny. I spoke to Yarrow, and this in my head it makes sense. I spoke to Yarrow. I spoke to David Heath. Yarrow, Phalanx, David Heath, Lock and Load, Uwe Eichert, Academy Games, and they say when a designer comes up to me, if in 2 minutes I'm not interested, get lost. So, my friend, he likes you.
Obviously it's my first game that I had signed, so it was a lovely experience when I took the game to his house and we got it out on his table and we started playing. We're just talking and we just started playing the first turn, and without really kind of saying anything significant, we'd into the first turn. So we'd probably been in his house for about 20 minutes. He just kind of looked up to me and he just said, "You found your publisher." And that was it. It's not like I want to sign this game or anything. He just said, "You found your publisher."
Yep, that's great. Well, he likes the game.
Yeah.
And a personal question: did he serve you any food when you went there?
He's a very, very sociable chap. Yeah, his wife made us some lovely food, and he was, from the moment I arrived, he treated me superbly. Yeah,
that warms the cockles of my heart, man, because you know what, it just brings me. I like the guy. I never even met the guy. I like the guy. Whatever. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy. Yeah, he's super passionate about getting good games out to people. He's an Empires in Arms fan, and so is Voldemort. They both played it like 30 years ago, and absolutely loved it. And they've always been kind of looking to do a sort of a multiplayer Napoleon game for a long time. And so when he saw the game, straight away it attracted his attention, because that's the kind of thing he's got a passion about anyway. So it's been just great working with him, because he's just as enthusiastic about the period as I am. He loves it, and he's very knowledgeable. So the whole experience has been incredible, actually.
Yeah, no, I could just sit and hear him. I told him to say, just talk. Me, he's like a Mark Herman. Just talk. He's got so much information, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, he really well.
Were you, when looking for publishers, and it's important when looking for publishers, did you have, because I know you're with Phalanx now, did you have a preferred publisher that you think your game would fit?
Yeah, I didn't. To be honest, I before I got a publisher, before I went to Phalanx, I didn't really know who I was gonna to be able to get it published by. So effectively, I kind of made a list of all the kind of war game, strategy game publishers that I could think of, and loads of them in America. A lot of these publishers are kind of American based. There's a few in Europe as well, but I really wanted to meet people. I didn't, just sending off blind emails in the hope that a right person.
No.
So I thought UK Expo was coming up. I just thought, well, I'll go to UK Expo, and if GMT games are there, if Dan Versen games are there, I'll go and talk to them. And obviously, none of those people were there. A lot of the big American companies didn't come over to the UK. This is in 2019.
All right.
But Phalanx were there, PSC were there, Nuts were there. So I basically talked to the ones that were there.
Right.
That's basically what it came down to. I had no knowledge about Phalanx any more than I did about any of the others. Other than I knew what games they'd published, and I knew a bit of the background of the companies just from looking at their websites and stuff. But I didn't know anybody in any of these companies. I didn't have any preference really. I was just keen to get the game in front of people, see what they thought of it.
And it's funny how things work out, because I think your game is actually perfect for Phalanx. Perfect.
I think you're right.
It's made for Phalanx, and that's why I was asking: were you bullseyeing Phalanx, because that's their game?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and I think I've only kind of realised that after the fact. Say a company like GMT, I don't think this is a game that GMT would publish.
I don't know.
I'd have been kind of wasting my time, perhaps trying to pursue that. I mean,
in your defense, I don't think it's a game that would fit or would probably sell as good at GMT than it would at Phalanx.
Absolutely, absolutely. I perhaps hadn't realised that as much until afterwards. It was only after the game started to get developed, once I started to know the people at Phalanx. I was very fortunate. I went to Warsaw last summer during the COVID lockdown, sort of in England and most of Europe. So it was heavily locked down last kind of March to middle of the year, June time. And it opened up a bit in the summer. Over the summer, I was able to go to Poland with Yara and another game developer, a chap called Scott Moore, who I've been doing some development work with, an English chap. And we went out there and we met quite a few of the people from the Polish part of Phalanx. So I got to meet sort of, 10, 12 people from the team from Poland, which was fantastic, because there's nothing better than actually meeting people face to face. So now, Marius, who's had quite a bit to do with the development of the game, I've been out for a beer with him in Warsaw. I know him, you know, I feel like I can email him or phone him and chat to him. We quite often do sessions on Tabletop Simulator where we're, you know, working on the games.
Okay.
And I can talk to him as a friend because I know him. Whereas if I'd never met him and he was just someone I'd emailed, that's a totally different relationship you've got.
Yes. Yeah.
So that kind of thing is really important.
I know there's a lot lost in translation. A lot. And here's a real boring question. Since this is your first published game, this is a different type of business for you. Now, how do you negotiate something that is not part of your business? Does it fall under the business? You know what I'm trying to say? Does it fall under the business category, or is this totally different? There's a new type of negotiation. Do you have room to negotiate, or is this what it is?
Okay. As not in negotiating the game, but negotiating.
Yeah. Yeah, I know
what you're saying. Well, so I mean, obviously, I'd kind of retired as an optometrist,
right?
So I had a lot of time on my hands to be able to design the game. I've watched a lot of kind of YouTube videos and read blogs and all stuff about the board game industry, and basically everybody says, as a board game designer, you're never going to make any money.
That's another. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that was my sort of start position. Like, I can't spend the next 2 years of my life developing this game hoping that I'm going to get rich out of it, because basically you're not. So then you got to look at it. It's like, okay, so this is something that you got to be passionate about. This is something that you want to do because you want to do it. This has got to be something you're doing because you love it. And, you know, don't tell Yarrow this, but, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's fantastic that it's being published. If I don't make a penny out of it, you know, it's not the end of the world. And I shouldn't say that live on air.
No.
but I think Yarrow knows that. You know,
yes, of course.
I've had with him. But Yarrow's obviously of the opinion when I was speaking to him, he's saying, "Oh no, you'll be able to make some money." But you know, I don't think it's going to be very much.
No.
But I didn't try and do a deal to try and make him.
I understand. I mean, they have the manufacturing, the logistics, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from you. 2 years thinking about this, all your history, knowledge. Someone's got to pay for that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call Yarrow. He's gonna pay you for that. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if I get paid out beyond my wildest dreams, it'll work out something like 10 pence an hour, which is like
no, I know,
about 10 cents an hour. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, you don't do it for the money.
Now, my last question, and I really appreciate. It's really nice meeting you, man. Will you ever? Do you go to cons in the States or?
I haven't been. I've never been over there. I would love to, and certainly if it hadn't been for COVID, I think I probably would have come over in 2020. Actually,
which one?
I don't know enough about them. Obviously, Gen Con is the one you hear about a lot, but there's as I say, I mean, I've never been to any, and I wouldn't know probably where to start. So I think I'd have to research it a bit. Which one would you recommend then? Where would you say I should go?
Well, look, if I'm speaking for Yarrow's a businessman, right?
Yeah.
So obviously you're going to want to go to Gen Con where there's 100,000 people. I don't know how you're going to deal with that. I wouldn't.
No.
All these huge cons, but I like the little cons. I'm not a businessman. I like the little cons where it's more familiar, but you're never going to go there. Yarrow's never going to send you there, man.
No, I don't think Yarrow sent me to any. If I go, I'll be funding myself. I think it's just going for a holiday. That would be what it's all about.
And then when you went to Warsaw, were you? Did anybody show you around? Did you walk around the ghetto, the old ghetto?
Yeah, well, there's kind of not much of the old kind of ghetto left. We did one of the evenings we was out walking around, and there was kind of some marks on the pavement. And Marius, I was walking along with, he said, "Oh, this is the outline of the wall of the outside of the ghetto." And we was kind of walking in a kind of a 1960s style, kind of Stalinist type of building program type of area. I mean, obviously, the Polish it wasn't Stalin, but it was very kind of concrete jungle, modern 1950s, 60s kind of building area. But they still had bits on the floor marked out where the ghetto had been, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, that the reason why I asked that is for some reason I take it very personally. I seem to channel all that bad stuff, and it just, oh my God. I don't know if I'd like to go there, man. Seriously.
No.
I don't know.
It was very, because Yarrow obviously was there as well. I had some quite interesting talks with him. Scott Moore had come with us as well as another English chap. So Yarrow was quite keen to tell us as much of the history as possible and to talk through, because he grew up in Poland, obviously under the communists, and he's seen it, from all the angles. And he was talking about this, when you come out of the sort of central railway station, there's this massive kind of building in the center of Warsaw. And Yarrow saying that the Russians built it there as a kind of, like a symbol, like, we've built this here kind of thing. We're the Russians, that was his view, obviously. But just really interesting. It must have been very difficult living there under communism, I think.
Oh my God. I don't even know. That's why I speak to Yarrow, and I know he's very impassioned. Anyways, I mean, I could go on with this interview for hours. Trust me, Andrew. I'm going to cut it here. It was a pleasure meeting you. I hope we can meet somewhere in the United States of America.
Yeah, but I'd love to come out there at some point for sure. If COVID willing, at any point, perhaps next year or something. Perhaps if once Coalition is actually published and it's out, I might be able to come over to a show sometime. And
and you know what? When the game comes out, when you have a physical copy, let's get in touch, and so we can push that and show everybody, blah blah blah,
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. It's very kind.
No problem. Thanks again, and thanks for the people that showed up.
Yeah,
Andrew, good luck. I don't think you need it. If Yarrow's there, you're a rich man, and I'm glad he fed you. That's very European of him. Very, very good. And look, stick around. I'm gonna do my super outro. And again, thank you, people. Andrew, stick around.